Also have Mr. Entertainment, guy we like, guy that was busy yesterday, guy that will be busy with the folks from Husker 24/7. Brian Christopherson joins us. Good morning, BC.
Good morning. I was about to boo when you said the Lions and Packers, but I held my tongue.
We have a dump button. Yeah. You could have said whatever you want.
You know what? In that division, you could have 3 teams win 14 games.
Yeah, it's possible. At least I would say at least 12 or 13 for sure at this point. So, yeah, it's a tough division. The Lions have. I'm not saying this to wish it on. Actually, I am. I'm saying it to wish it on them. They have the '98 Vikings vibes going. Where it's just like too easy on offense. Maybe you get them in the playoffs. They tighten up a little bit. Guy misses a kick from 35 yards that he hasn't missed all year. Something like that happens. Not that I'm dwelling on that. That's a long time ago, and I don't think about it anymore, but that could happen.
Would have been the greatest Super Bowl ever. 48-45.
Anyway, we got stuff around here, I guess.
So to yesterday's proceedings, what was the most significant to you that happened yesterday, either from a player standpoint or a coach standpoint?
It was the statement that at least it hit my email inbox at 7:11 p.m. about Holgorsen. I know Thamel had put it out there a few minutes before that, but about him returning with the contract. Didn't surprise me, but I thought it was the needed counter punch to the day's activity. Yeah. And had it taken even a half hour or hour longer, I don't know if Husker fan sanity would have made it. So it was like right on cue. And I thought that was the biggest headline of the day, honestly, because if you had to ask me before the Iowa game, okay, when you get to early December, there's going to be a lot happening the first few days, portal and all this stuff, coaches. What's the biggest? It's like retaining Holgorsen to me, because I just think there's so much weight not only in having a respected play caller like that, and maybe I wrote this, maybe I'm a little biased by the fact I have loved his press conferences and the truth sermons we've had from him up front, but also the fact that he's been a head coach for 13 years, and I think right now that sounding board for Rule shouldn't be underestimated along with the play calling. So I thought that was the biggest deal, and I'm not dismissing all the departures and stuff that came before it, because I've had a lot of respect for Tony White and what he's done, and I think if I were a Florida State fan, I'd be pretty pumped up about it. So I don't view that as insignificant. I'm not glossing over it, but the biggest headline to me was Holgorsen, and it was like a little boxing match. It punched back at the other stuff.
That's so true, BC, because of all the things that happened yesterday. If you were to say, okay, what's the opposite of what happened? Dana not staying and let's say he took the Oklahoma job, which obviously is gone as well now too. That would have caused more panic among the fan base, and rightfully so, because you're kind of putting all your eggs in that basket to fix the woes.
Yeah, I think so. And also, I mean, I'm not trying to throw something out there in the air, but you want your quarterback and some of those young players on offense, I think in particular, to be hopefully excited about the direction things are going. And at least in the recent press conferences after games and stuff, you felt with Raiola like a real, just the excitement about how they were getting better under Holgorsen. And so you hope that all connects together, and you'd like to see that with the full runway. I just wanted to see what that looks like if Holgorsen's here a full off season and working with some of those guys. And I also knew, regardless if Tony was coaching here next year or not, it was going to be a very much a remodeled defense in 25. It was just going to be a lot of new faces in the nucleus. And so the fact that you'll have a new leader with that group sort of fits in a way, and it's not that strange to me. And I mean, honestly, since Tony's been here, it's always been, when's he leaving? That's always been like a discussion that's part of it. So I think a lot of people kind of had it pegged for about 2 years that he might be here, and so it is. I think the disappointment And where it would have been more celebratory is that it was always thought he was going to do a head coaching job, not a DC move, which some people view as lateral.
What do you think? So the weird season that unfolded, and a guy off the street calls plays for the last 3 games, and we saw a significant difference. Whether guys executed, just individuals that performed better. Um, only 10 points on Friday night, but there were a lot of points that were left on the field, unfortunately for Nebraska. Now with a commitment, going to be here. Where do you think will be the biggest impact to Holgorsen of being here for 3 games and then scheming against the likes of a USC, Wisconsin, Iowa, being involved in a Big Ten night game late in the year where elements come into play? Will it be more significant to Holgorsen for the current guys here or for what he now needs to make sure everything works?
That's a really good question. I think the biggest thing for him getting here for these 3 games was for him to examine the personnel of, like, these are my nucleus guys. These are the guys that I really feel like I can go to battle with, and he already probably has a strong idea of some of them. We could use the example of the fact when he first got here, he was calling everybody by numbers, right? Not names. And that started to shift by like week 3. There were certain guys who had moved on from number to name territory where he'd say their names. And I think if you want to use it that way, that was an example of, like, he'd started to figure out, okay, these are some of the core group of guys who I can work with. Like when you heard him talk about Ja'Cory Barney and how he reminds him of Tank Dell at that he had at Houston. And so I think he saw certain guys and maybe they reminded him of players he's had. Okay, I can use him this way. If we did this with him and we had more time with the planning, we could also go this avenue with this guy. So I think that was the biggest thing. But your question could get you into a really layered response, and that's why it's a really good question, because there had to be some use to, even though he's a Midwest guy, he's played in cold weather games and all that at West Virginia. He's very familiar with Iowa Hawkeye football. You go into that game on Black Friday and you're down there on the sideline when it's 20 degrees and you see, like, just how it is. Like, if you don't take advantage of that 1 or 2 plays, you lose that game. And it has happened in Nebraska constantly. And I don't know, there might be some lessons there. Maybe not. Maybe it's as simple as, hey, catch that pass on the 2nd and 1 play with 7 minutes left. It's a 50-some yard touchdown, and it's a 17-10 win. That might be what he would say in a really blunt moment. It could be as easy as that. But I have to think there's something you take from just getting a look at, okay, this is the Big Ten right here, right now, and this is what it takes against these type of defenses. It's got to count for something.
And then there's the other part of the equation, which you can't ignore. If I'm a portal receiver, if I'm an offensive guy, that name means something. Dana Holgorsen I'm taking that call. So suddenly there's a level of caliber of receivers that Nebraska may not have been in contention for at all, but now to go play for Dana because he's comparing guys to the likes of Tank Dell, that name's going to carry something to where there could be some names where we're like, whoa, they got that. How'd that happen? That happened because of him.
Yeah, there's a little momentum with offense potentially, and I say that knowing that any day can bring it. We shouldn't be surprised by anything, I guess, at this point. So you never know what's going to happen as far as a player announcement or the portal or all that. But there should be a lot of guys on offense who have a little hop in their step. So that was what Monday was. It was like, okay, the offense sort of got a jolt there. And the defense, you're like, okay, we knew it was going to be a remodeling job, but maybe we're taking this down to the base structure even more than we knew. When you see like Jamari and Mekhi Bear go in there. But what you're asking about the offense is absolutely right. Like maybe a Cortez Mills still says, yeah, I'd like to be a part of that. We'll see. So that that would be big. I thought that was a big part of the day too. There were some negative headlines for sure. There was the big Holgorsen thing, but also within it, at least as far as the recruits I talked to and got feedback from, it was encouraging because immediately at like noon yesterday, I think there were knots in people's stomach. Like, what about this recruiting class? The timing here on all of this stuff is terrible 2 days from signing day. So when you get Dawson Merritt, saying let's go, and you get Christian Jones with the GBR tweet, and Malcolm Simpson told us that he was still locked in. So anything can change, but that was like good stuff too for Nebraska. So it really was a day of like ups and downs, and it kind of, I don't know if it evened out or if you'd say it was more yay or nay, but the Holgorsen thing made it more of an even fight by the end of it.
Now that we're at 105 and tomorrow is financial letter of agreement day or whatever they're calling it, but Nebraska has some guys that, we've done this long enough, BC, where they committed a long time ago and they're really good players, but we kind of forget about them because we get enamored by, hey, that guy that's going to be a flip. But you mentioned Merritt. There's Parker that is out there. There's Mosey. I mean, this is a fairly good recruiting class, and then you have a nice in-state that is complementary as well. You need to get Tyson Terry and Pierce Mooberry healthy. But moving forward with 105 as your cap, what does that mean for recruiting classes every year? Because high school recruiting, to me, to you, to Nebraska, to other schools, still matters. You have to have it. But do you have to have guys play now sooner than later? That there's no real grace period to like kind of, hey, you got a year and a half. It's more like, hey, you basically have a year and it might not even be that.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't get quite to that, but I don't think you're that far from the reality of it. Like, there's going to be such an urgency with recruits. Like, obviously it takes guys sometimes 2-3 years to develop, especially if you're a lineman, but there is going to be, what can you at least do in some facet for this team within, like, by your second season? Like, can you be on the 2 deep by then? I think you'd have to, that's a real question when it's down to 105. And that's why I think it stinks, because I think we've seen a lot of examples of guys who it happens in year 3, 4, sometimes even 5. And a lot of those stories are out the window. And so I don't know. This is a question I'd like to ask Rule, and when we can, about if it in any way changes the profile you're looking at as far as the recruitment of a prospect. I know they've always looked hard, as a lot of coaches say they do, but I think this staff especially does this guy truly eat, breathe, sleep football? Is he that guy? And if he's not that guy, even if he's a 4-star, even if he's got these sort of traits that you might like, I don't think it can work right now. Like, it's got to be a guy who, you know this as well as I do, Sharpie, that some guys are just gifted, and they've always been the best whenever they stepped on a field all their life as a kid. But it doesn't necessarily mean you love that particular game. You're just really good at it against your peers. And then you get to this level, and if you don't love it and you just don't want to immerse yourself in it and all that stuff, you aren't going to succeed at this level. And so you have to get beyond even traits and potential and all that, and it has to be about just desire to want to be great at football, or this is my favorite thing to do in all the world sort of thing. You got to find those type of kids, I think, to have a shot.
BC, is there anything positive to the 105? I'm genuinely curious, because I have a hard time finding anything positive.
Not to me, really. I think
I was afraid.
I think most of the coaches think that too. So we're in good company. Like, the Big Ten coaches, Ferentz had the quote before the Nebraska game with their media about how he walked out of, I think it was the May meetings, and he thought it was going to be a 120. He said he wasn't necessarily confident, but he was feeling like it was trending that way. And I think if you listen to Rule, like in the off season, he was of a similar mind that was going to be the number. And that just made so much more sense to me. I get maybe we don't need 140, 150. I understand that. But 120 gives you some grace for what the previous question was about development. It also allows you a few preferred walk-ons. That's a sad part of this cycle. Yeah. We're not seeing local guys. And I love some of these local guys like Ike Ackerman and guys like that. And I I hope they tear it up, at their schools that they go to. But there are names that you think of that in the past would have probably been part of that preferred walk-on, and you don't see those post on X or anything, because they can't afford them because of the body count, and so that stinks. And so I don't know. I guess it makes you tighten up and really like your evaluation skills. You have to like say this seems like a negative, but we're going to embrace it as a positive and figure out how to be the best with the number that's given to us and be better at other people at maximizing our 105. That's the only way you can look at it because that's the reality of it.
A year from now, Dylan Raiola looks like what?
I just think he's going to be a lot more seasoned and probably a little sounder in a few decisions that maybe escaped him in the middle part of this year, having been through it once. And also, I think the Holgorsen effect can be real on him.
Yep.
I really, as you picked up on, I've been huge on the Dana addition. And so I'm pretty excited about that part of it, and especially for Dylan. In many ways, his freshman season went as you would have predicted. There's a lot of guys who have come in with a lot of fanfare who didn't recruits across the country at the quarterback position who don't even start their first year. And he did, and he went through and he took some arrows, and he had a really rough middle part. Some of it was other guys, some of it was him. As long as he's honest with himself about sort of the shortcomings he had, and I think he is of that make, I think he can really catapult off of it. So I thought it was a solid, first go around. And the thing that will be key for Dylan, and I think he knows this, is when you're at that position, we can talk about surface level numbers, but how much of it comes down to like 4 or 5 throws throughout the year, like in those throws, like it's a lot of pressure, but it's those particular throws you remember, like, did you make that throw in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll see, like that throw against Illinois where he led Lindenmeyer too far, the one where he missed to Jalen on the deep shot on the first series against Iowa. Those are the throws we'll see if he can bat a higher percentage on next year, because it might swing a game or two. It would have this season.
Hey, BC, as always, we appreciate it. I know you, Shafe, and Brunsey are going to be awful busy over the next couple of weeks. Appreciate it. And hopefully when we talk next week, we'll have a bowl destination and some juicy stuff to talk about, because we'll be a day into the portal being open.
Yeah. It'll be big stuff. I always enjoy being on. I was saying to somebody, I've been on the show, I think, for like 15 years or so, like that and it's just part of my Tuesday morning. So I always look forward to it.
Well, I appreciate that. Great stuff yesterday, my friend. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
That's Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7.
Got reflective on the